All right, Laura, whenever you're ready to start.
Okay. Well, welcome back to everybody who's here. This is the, gee, it looks like I didn't save my, interesting. I sent myself the wrong PowerPoint, but it'll probably work just fine. Interesting. Let me take a quick look. Huh. Almost looks like I didn't save my changes. No. Okay, I'm gonna resend myself this PowerPoint. No, just for a moment here. All right. So this is actually webinar 2 of Integrated Education and Training and Introduction. And the first part of this webinar is talking about the models of integrated education and training. So I do have a slightly updated PowerPoint that I just sent myself, and as soon as that comes in, I'll swap that out. You should have all received this by email. And I did change the first section there to be adult education and literacy. Sorry for the switching around here, but I have, I'm going to pull up a second. Yeah, if I can. No, yeah. No. Where's my email? No? Okay, I'll just use this one. Okay. So we reviewed these 3 components at our last webinar: adult education and literacy, workforce prep activities, and workforce training activities, the 3 required components of an IET program. Can everyone hear me okay? If you can't, please message Kim.
We can hear you.
All right. One of the questions that came up at our last webinar was regarding NRS tables, and here you see what the updated NRS Table 3 is supposed to look like. It's not like this in LACES right now, but the guidance that I received from LACES was that when we are inputting a new student for those programs that do use LACES, there in the student intake field is the option to select IELCE as a secondary program. So there's a secondary program field on that student intake screen. That's what allows us to code someone in this area, integrated English literacy and certification. Yep.
Hold on a minute. We don't have you.
Oh, am I not showing?
No. And
okay, let me go back.
Now you aren't even available to show too. What the heck?
Okay. For some reason
You're offline. So we can hear you, but your computer's not on.
Not on your...
I'm assuming you're talking on a phone.
Yes, I am.
Yeah, and your computer's not on.
At least you have me that way.
We can hear you, but we can't see you.
Okay, I'll come back to you. I'll try to come back to you.
That's okay. Everybody can proofread my my Mitchell United Way for the fun of it while you're.
Is that what you're showing right now?
Because apparently I'm showing them my stuff.
Ah. Okay.
These are technical difficulties. Please stand by.
Please stand by. Unfortunately, we don't have cute music to play.
Laura has arrived.
There's Mitchell United Way.
Yeah, yeah. There's my Mitchell United Way app. It's the blank one. I'm proofing it because I don't want to fill in their form, so I'm gonna use my own. Okay, you should have access to it.
It's still thinking, I guess. Thinking.
Oh. I'm wondering if we should take this one off.
Still thinking. Oh, share. Okay.
There you go.
There we go. Okay.
Now I won't interrupt.
No worries. Thank you. That was a helpful interruption. Okay, so here's that table 3, and I was just saying on the student intake form, on the student intake screen and laces, we're able to indicate IELC as a secondary program, which allows us to populate here. So now you can see everything okay?
Yes, we
You
can.
might,
Yep.
okay, great. All right. So program models. Here's a basic IET program model. And this first model is a concurrent, it includes concurrent separate classes. The second main model is a contextual class. So I'll go over those one by one. The concurrent separate classes, here's an example of what that might look like where a student is dual enrolled in an ESL, EL Civics class, or if they are AEL, but not ESL or ELA, they may have their regular ABE class or perhaps a pre-GED class that they're enrolled in, but at the same time, they're enrolled in an IET class that includes workforce preparation and workforce training and includes AEL activities in that class to support students that lack basic skills to be successful without that. And I had an example to share. Our model is that we do dual enroll our students that are interested in work readiness training or workforce training. We do enroll them in both an ESL and civics class. And they also participate in STEP cohorts, skills that employ people cohorts, where Monday through Thursday in the afternoons they can participate in a specific workforce training class. And then on Fridays they have are required to attend a workforce preparation class in job interview skills or math and measurements to prepare them for a specific workplace, as some of our employers are really looking at for specific math and measurement skills with the students that they hire out of our program. So that's an example. Another example of this that was pretty interesting to me that I heard about in one of the COABE conference sessions in Florida just this month was what's called Cluster VESL. And VESL stands for Vocational English VESL, Vocational English as a Second Language. And the cluster VESL is basically enrolling a student in a regular English class or ABE class if that's your area or focus. And say, for example, they have 1 or 2 hours of regular ESL and civics instruction, but then they have another hour tagged on to that, maybe it's half an hour, where the students have an opportunity to dig deeper into a career that they are preparing for. This would be more appropriate on my end for people who are pretty highly skilled and perhaps have good digital literacy skills. There are a few states that have a lot of resources online in regards to career pathways. One example might be the state of Illinois, and their resources are open to the public. I haven't explored them yet, but I do intend to, because if we do have higher level students that might be a good fit for cluster VESL, we would have them enrolled in our regular English classes, but then for the last hour or so of their instruction, we would do kind of like a multi-level project-based learning experience where the students are exploring careers and vocabulary that are specific to their goals and needs. We do have a student that recently joined our evening classes who is studying for his, actually again with the nursing, he's studying for his CNA. And what we would be able to do to better meet his needs, because we don't have step classes in the evening that are for introduction to patient care, we can enroll him in a regular English class and then give him the opportunity to study independently or with the help of a volunteer, or in a kind of a multi-level, multi-project classroom with a teacher where he can study specifically for that CNA. So if I had a group of students and they all had different career interests, it would be kind of like an independent learning lab that second hour of class. The project that was described by a presenter from the state of California was they offer a 3-hour class. The first 2 hours are English, and the last hour is the workforce preparation and workforce training component. So that's just an introduction to model number 1, where students are enrolled in concurrent but separate classes. The second model of a basic IET program is a contextual class. A student is enrolled in an IET class, as you would call it. It has a civics component, but that IET class needs to balance ABE skills, AEL skills, English as a second language skills, with specific workforce training and including workforce preparation activities. So it's like a mega class. An example would be a bridge class, and this is a class that we offer for pre-CNA, Introduction to Patient Care, where any student can enroll in that training class. They're taught AEL skills in the context of a CNA occupation or the occupational cluster of nursing. What we have lacked in this is the civics component. So if we enhance that bridge class by adding a civics component, then it would qualify as a contextual class, a contextual IET class. And then here's the third example, but it's still that second model of a contextual class. So this one is called an ESL Civics IET class. An example of this is on a quarterly basis. Our program offers units of instruction that are for specific occupations or occupational clusters. So we're still teaching ESL, we still have civics included, but we're focusing on specific occupations or occupational clusters. And for our program, those typically are those really high demand occupations for our entry-level clients, with manufacturing occupations and hospitality occupations. So those are the units that we've developed so far, where we're offering from 2 to 3 weeks of instruction. So it's on a smaller scale, but it's an example of what that might look like for a contextual class. Another example of this contextual class is IBEST. Has anyone heard of IBEST, the IBEST model? This stands for the Integrated Basic Education and Skills Training class. This was developed and implemented in Washington State. There's a lot of research behind the effectiveness of this model of IET. And in fact, as you read through the descriptions in the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, to me it has IBEST written all over it, that they really based, I get the sense that they based some of their ideas about IET on the IBEST model itself. And it would stand to reason because that's where a lot of the research has been done. There are 3 different types of IBEST instruction, as you can see on this slide, where it's not only this third model. This is the most widely known model, the fully integrated one, where you have co-teachers. The co-teachers may be an ESL or ABE instructor and, for example, a college or university instructor who co-teach an IET course. But there are a couple other examples of what that IBEST instruction can look like. The first is aligned, where the students are concurrently enrolled in a workforce training class and a content-aligned AEL class. And that can look, practically speaking, it can look different depending on what works for a certain program. An example would be that on Mondays and Thursdays, the student is in their AEL class, and then on Tuesdays and Wednesdays, they are in a specific workforce training class. But in this model, the content of the AEL class is really connected to the topic of the workforce training. So if that is nursing, the AEL instructor is drawing in materials from their workforce training class, from their CNA manual, for example. And it really is expected that in any of these 3 types of IBEST instruction that the 2 instructors are somehow lesson planning together and somehow working together to make sure that the content is aligned. The partially aligned, again, joint planning. So there's joint lesson planning and joint decision making on the skills that are needed. It requires a high level of cooperation between those 2 instructors, again, especially when the decision making is cooperative. Thirdly is that fully integrated. And if you look at the Washington State website, at their IBEST materials, they don't share instructional materials there, but they share about these 3 models of instruction. And you can see videos that demonstrate different ways of implementing IBEST, which is IET, indeed. But it's pretty interesting to watch videos of that third model where you have the AEL instructor and the college or university instructor, or maybe the vocational education instructor in the same classroom. And they may be both at the front of the room. Maybe that technical school instructor, they do, they do a presentation on the topic of whatever the occupation is, and then they stop. And then the AEL instructor jumps in and adds clarification. So it's really fascinating to see that co-teaching in action. And if you're interested, I would encourage you to visit that website to see how they do that. So it's really an intriguing model of IET, and it's an example of this contextual class. But you have two instructors working together in the iBest version. Okay, so that's a lot in just a few slides. So the first one that we talked about was 2 concurrent classes that are separate. And this could be an iBest. It could be an integrated basic education and skills training type of class if this is your AEL instructor and maybe this class is delivered by a college instructor. But the trick of it is it's supposed to include AEL activities. That's where the co-teaching needs to come in because typically that's coming from the AEL instructor. This is a contextual IET class, and this is an ESL civics class. ESL civics IET class. An example of that was a bridge class. Okay. And here are 3 examples of how instruction can be delivered in iBest. Having a strong relationship with a local technical institute or college or university may be beneficial and would be very beneficial in delivering iBest. But programs that don't have that type of relationship still have the opportunity to provide IET. It just looks different depending upon the situation of the program. What questions do you have about these examples, these model examples?
Laura, you said you're doing some of the models?
Yeah.
But you're kind of running them, here's your ESL class, and then here is your workforce training class.
Yeah.
So are you using multiple funding sources to make that happen?
Yes. Okay. Although you would be able, those are all allowable activities under WIOA. Mm-hmm. So if the funding was sufficient, certainly a program could do that just with AEL funds. We do use, state funds, federal funds, private funds, employer support can also be used here.
That's what I was going to
have a relationship where there's buy-in from a local employer.
Laura, are you going to, is this an opportune time to discuss a little bit further or define that workforce training component for providers who maybe don't have the wherewithal or aren't situated in a locale that's really conducive to co-teaching in a iBest or Minnesota's Fast Track type of model?
We certainly can touch on that at this time. In the next webinar, I'll be going more deeply into workforce training, so that might be another opportunity to discuss what that might look like. But is there anything more specific that you wanted to say about that, John?
You know, I'll defer to your sequencing. I just, you know, to me, the iBest model is great and maybe a gold standard by which we can, you know, endeavor. But the
Yeah.
IBEST model, I mean, I think they're situated in a community college setting or under the auspices thereof. They have life skills coaches on the site, job coaches, I mean, they have such a comprehensive suite of services um, that if we critically examine what we're doing, it might be somewhat deflating. But I think we've got a lot of these components already in effect. They just might not look as well packaged or highly funded, but they're just real,
Well,
more practical.
and
Go ahead.
if we don't have them, John, one of the things that is partnerships. It's like, well, is there another entity, especially when you talk about providing, a lot of times you may have an agency that provides a service that you could use, and it benefits them because maybe you can bring them numbers for their own performance and things like that that may be beneficial. So not necessarily that you have to have it all, even if you're not located in a community college, but there are other avenues.
Absolutely. Kim and John, those are really great points. I would encourage all of us to think outside the box when it comes to IET and that gold standard of the IBEST model. There are some states and some programs that really struggle to make it look the way Washington State has been able to. So the encouragement really is to go ahead and think outside the box, look at those other potential partners in the community, also employers. Our key asset in terms of delivering IET are our local employers, and working with them on what kind of skills, what kind of terminology is needed. And I know, Kim, you've had experience in this area as well, that your work with that local employer informs the instruction and the curriculum and the materials that are used by your AEL or ESL instructor. And that is a fantastic starting place for IET. I wouldn't wait until a full-fledged relationship is established with higher education, because in some discussions that I've had, that has been extremely difficult for some programs because of the expectations and requirements that exist within higher ed. It doesn't always go smoothly. So I would say let's not wait and take advantage of the resources and the relationships that you do have in place, and explore additional relationships with local employers to inform IET. There are a lot of resources that are already available online also that can provide the contextualized instruction material that we need for IET. So we need to take advantage of those resources. I know that typically the materials that we find online that are related to workforce training are too challenging for our learners, so we take that information and bring it to the level of our students so that they can successfully access that content. Other comments before we move to our checkpoint number 1? This is an opportunity to stop and reflect. Are you already designed, and by you I mean your program, is your program already designed to provide IET activities or programming to your learners? The second question, we'll skip the second question until later. So, does anyone want to share on question number 1? Are you already designed to provide IET? And do you want to say anything about that? And feel free to type notes or comments, and Kim can read them if you're muted.
think we are on the precipice of being ready. I had some discussions with a couple of staff people today, and what we talk about is that we're not meeting the needs of our highest level English language learners, which by no means are high on the whole scale of English language learners, but I know we're not meeting their need because they're telling us that by leaving. And so we've been talking about a lot about, I guess I've been, and now they're starting to say we obviously need to provide them with something different. And I think that I don't think it has to be that difficult.
No, I would agree.
I just need to find the partner that is, a lot of times potential partners are really screaming for people, and that's generally not our problem. So I think that's something we could definitely bring to the table in a partnership with bringing skills training to more people.
Yeah, great.
And Kim, when you mention that, are you thinking, given the unemployment situation, that maybe more incumbent worker training programs or skill upgrading and retraining might be that workforce training component?
It could be that. I don't know if it will be that, at least initially. I think that maybe trying to get more of the potential workforce in healthcare might be an option. There's just a lot of potential opportunities yet, and we still know there is a potential workforce among our new citizens, like especially in Huron, that aren't necessarily in the workforce yet, or aren't in the workforce right now because of some changes. So they probably would be my initial target. And I do have a lot of people that say, I don't want to do this kind of work. I want to be in this kind of work. So.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Kim. Thanks for the questions, too. Are you ready for part 2 of webinar 2? We have a little less than 30 minutes to tackle this second section of the second webinar, and I think we'll be able to achieve that. Part 2 is taking a closer look at workforce preparation activities, and our third webinar will be focusing on workforce training activities. And I think as we hit these areas in the 3 webinars, I think it will help all of you to feel a more complete sense of what IET is, and hopefully generate some really good food for thought on what you can do to enhance your own programming with IET. Because they all really do fit together, and these 3 webinars represent actually many, many hours of my own personal research, just reading and watching webinars and going to conference sessions. So I'm really giving you a nutshell that I hope once we get through all 3, you'll feel a lot more confident about IET and hopefully excited about what it means for your own learners. So this, the objective of this remainder of webinar 2 is to describe one workforce preparation activity that will enhance your current instruction. I think you can probably do that right now. Workforce preparation activities are quite straightforward, and really this is a broad category of IET because, as you may recall from our first webinar, it includes employability skills, transition skills, soft skills that we provide to our learners. So we're going to focus in for the next few minutes on workforce preparation activities. Here are the examples that I shared with you during our last webinar. The workforce preparation activities are, and this is a specification that I found useful. These are activities, services, or programs. So when I read that terminology and attended one of the webinars that I participated in myself, it really emphasized that terminology, that these are activities, services, or programs, provides us flexibility in the provision of workforce preparation activities. So because it can include a service, it can include, for example, one-to-one assistance on completing an online job application, or one-to-one assistance in career navigation. So whereas we currently don't have the funding to allow us to really delve deeply into that, we do partner with the local department of our local labor office, our one-stop, to help with that. With some of our more intensive needs, we do have that permissible, it's a permissible activity under workforce preparation activities, I should say, to provide one-to-one assistance if there's something that requires more intensive work with a student, for example, that has low literacy skills. And really, this is something that varies sometimes by program area and the types of clients and the numbers of clients that are seen. So that's all I'll say about that, because really every program and every scenario might be different. Locations can differ, but that's something that is specified in WIOA regarding workforce preparation activities, that we do have the opportunity to provide services there as well. And these workforce prep activities are to facilitate the acquisition of basic academic skills, including numeracy, critical thinking skills, digital literacy, and you see the list there, self-management skills, utilizing resources, information, working with others, understanding systems, and it includes transitional skills for post-secondary education, training, or employment. As I said before, these are also known as employability skills, soft skills, marketable skills, and transition skills. So the content of the Bring Your A Game, that type of content would qualify as workforce preparation activity. Here's checkpoint 2. So checkpoint 2 is our time to consider these two questions. What workforce preparation activities are you or your program facilitating with your learners right now? And do you have a resource or material relevant to workforce prep topics you'd like to recommend at this time? If you don't have something to share for number 2, that's fine, but does anyone want to share for number 1? Based on just that brief introduction, what workforce prep activities are you already doing with your students? Again, you can just type in your chat box your ideas for that. Or if you have audio enabled, feel free to shout out your thoughts on number 1.
Laura, from my perspective, could we say the local providers work in terms of digital literacy, whether it's your work or Cornerstone's work or Rapid City's work with tablets, or in-class tutelage on using media and technology beyond just online job applications? Could we talk about, what about programs which use the ESL competency checklist? Do you think that all those different categorical masteries across a whole host of topics related to employment, or, you know, or is that a bit of a stretch? Do you think that's more just adult ed and literacy activities?
The employment section of the ESL competency checklist would likely, that would fit as employability skills activity. But some of the other topics might not be as easy to connect to workforce preparation activities without some enhancements. But I think some of what we see with the college and career readiness standards, when we connect that with our ESL competency checklist, I think that lends itself to workforce preparation activities.
Mary,
we see more critical thinking coming up there. Go ahead.
Mary asks, well, she says, as you mentioned, the A-game soft skills training is one example, but then she said, would computer training fit into this category? And I'm guessing it's depending on the type of computer training, based on what you just said. So if it was something that's directly, yes, you're learning computer training that directly transfers to the workplace. Is that what you're saying? Or communication was.
I think the definition of workforce preparation activities, because it includes digital literacy as a topic, it's just telling us that according to the research, employers feel digital literacy is a requirement of their work readiness. So computer skills training I think it would most likely be countable.
Okay. And then Mary said, our work with global learning and observation for benefits of the environment fosters critical thinking and communication.
Yeah. Perfect. That falls under critical thinking and working collaboratively, I think.
Yeah.
Laura, this is Becky.
Yeah.
Hi. Sorry, I had to jump on a little bit late because I was with a client. I actually attended a session at COABE this year where they were talking about teaching employability skills and workforce preparation activities. And one of the things they mentioned that is important is, kind of what John already mentioned. We do a lot of these things all the time, and you referenced this too. We do a lot of workforce preparation with our students, particularly in ESL. But one of the things we fail to do sometimes is name the skills that we're teaching and actually explicitly talk about why those workplace skills are important and why students need to be able to demonstrate them. And I thought that was really interesting that, when we are teaching about, for example, the technology, computer skills, everybody says, oh, computers are important. Well, why are computers important? Well, you can't even work at McDonald's without having good computer skills now. So, to talk about, we do these kinds of computer skills because they're important in many occupations, and this is how they apply to those occupations, is one of the things we can do that's a fairly simple way to do that workforce preparation activity with our students. Would you agree with that, or am I oversimplifying?
For me, you cut out just like one real key word. Can you repeat that last statement?
Maybe. The fact that, if we talk to our students about computer skills and, we're teaching them digital literacy skills, but we have to explicitly tell them why they need those digital literacy skills and how they can apply them to different occupations and how they come into play in the world of work, that then we are able to think of that instruction as workforce preparation.
It helps us to think of it as workforce prep. I think we need to just recognize it is workforce prep. And what you're suggesting in terms of making that explicit in the classroom, that's phenomenal. And it's a best practice. It's a best practice for our teaching anyway, is to give our students the terminology to describe what they're learning. It empowers the students, for example, if they're going to a job interview and they're asked what kind of skills they have, the fact that we brought it up in class and helped them be able to communicate, I I know how to use a computer. I know how to use Microsoft Word.
Yeah.
I know how to use a tablet. This empowers them to be more effective in their job interviews and in future work opportunities for sure. And the why, yes, we can tell them. I feel like we can also elicit it from the students. Sometimes I think that's the most powerful message is when we ask students, why is this important for work? And then they come out with their previous work experiences and say, I needed this for my job in the hotel that I used to work in because they used computers to indicate which rooms needed to be cleaned and for me to input which ones had been completed. So
Sure.
that's, yeah, I think that's really exciting that you gleaned that from a session. I like those
Well, and
ideas.
you know, one of the things I got to thinking about, we have our students work in pairs and small groups all the time, but do we really talk to them about working collaboratively and the fact that that's a workplace skill?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there were just a whole bunch of kind of, oh, what idiots are we moments that I had during that session.
Becky, you had used the word simple or maybe the adverb simply to name it. Maybe that was the phrase, but I think, like Laura, this is a profound point. In fact, it might be the most important point in this webinar yet, is that we need to, and Director Gates's example of Globe, I think, is an apt one, where they were doing classroom-based sort of field study, and I still can't remember the name of that instrument, Mary, that measures the height of the trees, and they were measuring leaves, but to be able to articulate what you're doing and how it relates to the workforce, or then to be in a job interview and be able to say, well, I haven't used that particular computer application or that particular tool, but you know what I did do? I did this and this, and we put together a spreadsheet, and so I have a lot of skills, and to be able to name it, master it, and then articulate it to an employer or another individual as part of that working together. I think that these points are really paramount, so thank you.
Thank you, Becky and John.
Clinometer. Thank you, Mary. I'm going to learn that.
Oh, all right. Okay, I included a few examples from experience in our own program, and I'm sure that you have many similar examples. I don't really get deeply into the instructional application of workforce preparation activities here, just having planned it to be an introduction. So I'll just go briefly over these examples that I'm sure you'll relate to. Job interview skills are one example of workforce preparation activity, and I don't know if you can see that second point? Oh, there. Okay. The first example that I can share is job interview classes, which, as I mentioned before, our program does offer on Fridays. We offer a level A and a level B for our students on a monthly basis. And the students that are enrolled in a STEP cohort, they're in a concurrent model of IET, being dual enrolled in an English class and a workforce training class. They have workforce preparation activities on Fridays. It doesn't have to look that way. That could be really a part of their regular ESL class, for example. But here, I'm sharing that example of like a Friday job interview class. Another opportunity for integrating job interview skills as workforce prep activities in a program would be to offer a seminar or a workshop. And this might be something where an outside speaker comes in, maybe from your local DLR office, and maybe there's someone there with the expertise of being a JSAP instructor, and they do a workshop on job interview skills. That would be another example of a workforce preparation activity. Digital literacy, all of our programs offer this in one way, shape, or form. A couple of examples that I relate to this are our basic computer skills classes that we offer in our program right now. We offer them at noon, and typically we have 20 students attend that class on a daily basis. We offer those skills classes at different levels on a rotating basis, really teaching basic digital literacy. Another example that we have is integrated English and technology class. We offer those classes on Monday nights for our evening students, where our instructors develop lessons that really integrate digital literacy into the regular content of the ESL competency checklist. So students have access to those classes on Monday nights. The definition that we find of digital literacy is that we are using technology to help students find, evaluate, organize, and create and communicate information. So it is very overarching, and there are many opportunities to integrate digital literacy into our regular instruction, and that is a workforce preparation activity. Online job applications is another example. With Anap Ali from Somalia, we did some one-to-one coaching. So we just piloted that as an activity or service of workforce preparation activities under that umbrella. Because her literacy skills are very low. She can read, but not to the extent that she could complete an online job application for a local hospital, which is where she's working now. So we did some one-to-one coaching sessions with her to help her complete that online job application. And she was successful in obtaining that employment and is very happy there. Self-management is another category. An example of what we did in this area was a binder day. So we were teaching our students the self-management skill of organization, and it was a great adventure because of the background of our students being mostly SLIFE, students with limited and interrupted formal education. The standard method of organizing a binder was not something that was intuitive to our learners. So we explicitly taught how to use dividers, what a hole punch is, and taught the difference between organized and not organized. Actually, we received a mini grant that allowed us to purchase binders for all of the students and dividers for every binder. So that was a really exciting project to be able to do with our students. Another example is teaching students or building in the routine of reporting absences. So those things that you do on a daily basis with your students they might be an example of workforce preparation activities, because perhaps you require your students to check in with the teacher, or you model like a clock in, clock out system. Reporting absences to class, we do require our students to call in their absences and communicate with the teacher about that. So that's another workforce preparation activity that will help people in their future employment. We also did a unit on weather difficulties, cancellations, delays, late starts, training our students on how to navigate the expectations of weather cancellations, etc. And also, again, communicating if they're going to be absent because of a weather issue. So we did that in the winter. There are many applications to self-management. We did a unit on critical thinking in the context of numeracy, wanting to enhance and make sure that we were teaching numeracy with our English language learners. And here's where we tied in the critical thinking, was by utilizing some graphic organizers, having students work in teams to work with a budget and to decide what they can buy, how much of it they can buy to stay within that budget. So a very, very simple example of how to perhaps apply critical thinking to a numeracy context. There's the list. And we're just about out of time. So I just shared a few examples from our own program that qualify as workforce preparation activities, and I'm sure you have many examples yourselves. Checkpoint 3, our final checkpoint of this webinar, I'd like to invite you to share one workforce preparation activity, service, or program you would like to include to enhance your instruction or programming. So do you have any thoughts on or plans for something new that you're wanting to implement as a program that you'd like to share with the group?
I think in our program we still need to figure out a way to address like late starts and closures and things like that. We struggled with it all winter trying to figure out a way, and then we scapped by pretty much all winter and didn't have to deal with it. But honestly, I'm thinking now, as we've been thinking about it, it may be as simple as utilizing the 211 system that's available in our communities, where they can just call into 211 and we teach them how to call in and ask if they have English classes or something.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I think something as simple as that. The binder thing, Deb started that on the weekends, doing that with her class just to get their papers organized. And I think that that's been really beneficial, is because you can go back and look at stuff and review it and not wonder where those papers are.
Right.
So they do it as part of their keeping their class materials organized.
Excellent.
Mary made a comment, Laura. She said, I'd like for us to be more deliberate in how we help our learners articulate and communicate the skills they're gaining. And I think I would echo that. You know, we talk about them, but to get the students to talk about them, I think, is the next logical step. I really like that, Mary.
Thank you. Thanks, Mary. Thanks, Becky. Does anyone have a question they'd like to ask? We maybe have time for one question. Or comment.
Laura, I'd echo Director Gates' sentiment. Thank you kindly. I appreciate your helping us unpack the workforce preparation component today of IET. I think I'd be remiss if I didn't remind everyone, I don't know that we mentioned Key Trainer Work Keys specifically as a potential countable activity, but I think in most instances, wouldn't you agree that that would fit the bill?
Yeah. Yes. Great idea. Thank you. Workforce preparation activities are, as I mentioned before, quite broad. So there's so much of what you already do in the classrooms, what you already do in your program, that lends itself to workforce preparation. So our programs are already geared toward it, and I appreciate everyone's, Mary and Becky's comments, and John too, about making it explicit with our students, empowering them to articulate those skills. That takes it to the next level, that really takes it to the next level, empowering them to talk about it and helping them to make connections to what I call the WIFM, what's in it for them. I think that's a powerful part of any of our instruction, is really helping the students to think about why this learning is important to them, And if it's not for those that are work-bound, there are other connections that are easily made to life outside of your program, so their life in the community. So it's a great thing to apply. Thanks everybody for participating. I know that we're out of time. Kim, anything in closing?
You just might remind them of the number 3, the final one in the series.
Yes. Number 3 is next week. I think it's on Thursday at 3:30.
Yep.
So see everybody then. Thanks for participating.
Thank you.
Have a good afternoon.